It had been 392 years, 6 months, and some uncomfortable days since anyone had dared to knock on Sarava's door. If one could call a 10-meter slab of obsidian alloy, programmed to emit a deterrent frequency, a door. It moaned softly when it sensed movement beyond its perimeter, a sound like a dying star muttering in its sleep. Even the custodial drones refused to get within range. They cleaned the corridor by launching compressed air from a safe distance, then retreated like war veterans haunted by memories of sentient mops. Inside, Sarava sat in a throne that hadn't been a throne when she found it. It was technically a decommissioned power conduit, housing repurposed into furniture. Her people had offered her jewels, relics, thrones of light and plasma, but she preferred this broken conduit. It hummed. Sometimes it sparked. She liked that. She didn't move much. Occasionally she blinked. Once every cycle she would rise and hover a few inches above the floor, moving silently through the halls of Velastor, the orbital stronghold built around the husk of a dead comet. The comet had once been sacred. Now it was mostly used for bulk storage and diplomatic dinners, though never hers. No one dared. Her ears, long and sharply elegant, tilted slightly when she passed sensors, almost as if she were listening to something ancient or just very irritating. The rest of her resembled a human woman. If a human woman had alabaster skin, eyes that shimmered like molten topaz, and the distinct aura of someone who might unmake your atoms for interrupting her nap. When Ryan Elward crash-landed, he hadn't meant to offend galactic royalty. He hadn't meant to land at all. He was supposed to make a quick courier run between the Montrean, trade rings, and Earth's lunar embassy. Simple stuff. Diplomatic snacks, vintage candies, ancient Earth artifacts that smelled vaguely of basements and nostalgia. The turbulence hadn't been his fault. The delivery ship, a borrowed rust bucket named Sugar Knife, had a nervous engine and a personality glitch that made it stutter insults at asteroids. When the ion field shorted out mid-jump, the vessel coughed, swore, and belly flopped straight into orbit over Velas's Tor. The crash wasn't dramatic exactly, unless you count spinning into a high-security docking bay while playing a looped Earth jingle about breakfast cereal. The moment the ship skidded to a halt, its emergency beacon screamed a garbled, "Please do not sue us." Ryan stepped out covered in foam and dignity. Mostly foam. He was tall, lean in the way people who don't sit still tend to be, and had the default smirk of someone who knew they weren't supposed to be alive but refused to question it. A security drone hovered toward him. "State your identity and intent before I am authorized to burst your kneecaps." "I'm Ryan Elward," he said. "Courier, certified. Intent, not dying today. Also, snacks." He held up a box labeled Twinkles, now with less regret. The drone paused. It beeped. Then it floated away, muttering about paperwork and unpaid overtime. Ryan wandered, as one does on an alien fortress moon. He admired the decor, part crypt, part spaceship, part abandoned museum. Everything was unnecessarily shiny and aggressively ceremonial. He took a wrong turn naturally and ended up somewhere the oxygen felt disrespected. The corridor dimmed. His footsteps echoed like they had secrets. The obsidian door loomed ahead. There was no doorknob. Of course not. But he saw a panel. Shrugging, he reached into his bag, pulled out the first object that wasn't a snack, and held it up to the panel. A small, one-eyed, plush penguin. The door moaned open. Inside, Sarava raised one eyebrow. He stood there wide-eyed and unshaven, holding a filthy plush animal like it was a diplomatic offering. "Hi. You look like someone who might need a penguin?" Her silence could have frozen atmospheres. He swallowed. "It's soft and lopsided, but loyal, you know, as penguins go." She blinked. Once. Ryan waited. Then very slowly her hand extended. She took the penguin, held it with 2 fingers, studied it like it might explode or speak philosophy. He realized belatedly that her eyes were the color of fire caught in amber. Also that he might not survive the next minute. Then she spoke. "It has one eye." "Yeah," he said. "It saw too much." Her eyes narrowed. Then, so subtly it might have been imagination, her mouth twitched. Just once. Some of them activate only under very rare emotional conditions. Did I trigger it? You gave a gift, an unrepayable one. Okay, let's not get dramatic, he said. It was a penguin. To a being who has never been given anything. That matters. There was another click. A second console lit up, displaying a constellation pattern Ryan didn't recognize. Sarava studied it, silent and still. Then she did something unexpected. She sat beside him. He froze. I mean, sure. The floor's great. Got that ancient machine room ambiance. I hear it's all the rage. She looked down at the penguin. Does it have a name? She asked. Ryan blinked. Not really. I guess I always called it Captain Blorp. She stared at the toy, then nodded solemnly. Captain Blorp, she said. Very well. So, we're naming stuffed animals now? There are worse beginnings. He grinned. True, though you might be setting a precedent for diplomatic relations that involves a lot of plush toys and weird Earth snacks. She didn't smile. Not quite, but her shoulders relaxed. Outside in the corridor beyond her chamber, the obsidian door shifted slightly, just enough for a hidden sensor to flicker and vanish. Elsewhere on Velastor, something ancient took notice. Ryan discovered that Sarava's idea of hospitality included neither beverages nor chairs. Instead, she provided silence. Vast, layered, borderline sacred silence, punctuated by the occasional flicker of ancient machinery, and at one point, the long, mechanical scream of a pipe venting steam 3 rooms away. He'd nearly jumped out of his skin. Sarava hadn't blinked. They'd been sitting, well, she floated imperiously while he sat cross-legged like an enthusiastic kindergartner with bad posture, for what felt like a geological epoch. Eventually, Ryan cleared his throat. So, he said, does the fortress come with Wi-Fi, or is this more of a no signal, no hope kind of palace? She tilted her head. Signal? You know, to connect to the... He paused. Actually, never mind. Based on the decor, I'm guessing your last software update was about 6 centuries ago. The fortress is entirely self-contained, she said. Its systems were designed to operate independently from galactic infrastructure. Great. So I'm stranded in a haunted space cathedral with a vampiric monarch and no way to check my messages. This is fine. She regarded him steadily. You are remarkably composed for someone facing indefinite captivity. I crash-landed on a space station, not in a dungeon. Technically, this is an upgrade. You've got better lighting and fewer rats. Also, your ceiling has asteroids. He expected annoyance, maybe an ominous hum. Instead, her long ears twitched slightly, like antennae picking up faint amusement. Your presence here has already altered system behavior, she said. The machines you awakened are connected to something ancient. Something I have not dared disturb. Because you were afraid of what might wake up? No, she said, because it's deeply annoying. He blinked. I'm sorry? She gestured to the glowing glyphs on the console. The fortress was once a hybrid intelligence, a sentient infrastructure seeded with fractured personality shards, but it became whimsical. You built an AI fortress and it developed a sense of humor? It began labeling the lavatory corridors with riddles and replaced tactical alerts with birdsong. One day it flooded the central chamber with soap foam. It declared war on a vending machine. I had it placed into dormancy. And I accidentally woke up the comedy ghost? Possibly. As if on cue, a nearby console flared to life. A mechanical voice croaked out of a long dormant speaker. Error, bubble dispenser not found. Please consult the hamster. Ryan gave a slow, impressed nod. I see what you mean. Sarava stood and approached the terminal. Her armored fingers danced across the controls with practiced elegance, but the console responded with stubborn whimsy. The lights flickered, and the screen displayed a dancing pineapple labeled Captain of Sanity. I did not authorize this, she muttered. Maybe it missed you, Ryan offered. I will miss it from existence. Despite her threat, the console beeped again. This time the glyphs morphed into star maps. Fractal spirals, long-forgotten routes, coordinates drifting like bones in space. Sarava's eyes narrowed. She turned and walked deeper into her chamber. She did not order him killed. She did not erase him from the timeline. She simply said, "Follow." Ryan blinked. "Okay, cool. Following the scary space vampire lady. This is how horror movies start. Just saying." The door sealed behind him. Across the station, alarms whispered half-heartedly, unsure whether a protocol had been violated or history had just blinked. And in her hand, Sarava still held the penguin. The room Ryan found himself in was less a chamber and more a forgotten cathedral of machines. Ancient consoles lined the walls like slumbering deities, their screens dim but not dead. The air buzzed with a faint electrical purr. Overhead, fragments of a shattered planet had been set in orbit just outside the transparent ceiling. They drifted slowly, like reluctant dancers on an invisible tide. Sarava walked without sound, her armored boots never touching the floor. She paused before an oval-shaped chair that might have once been part of a starship's core. It pulsed gently as she lowered herself into it, cradling the one-eyed penguin in one hand like a war trophy or a newborn that could explode at any second. "You are not dead," she said, almost with regret. "I get that a lot," Ryan replied, glancing around the room. "Is this your office?" "Very cozy. I like what you've done with the terror." She did not respond. Her gaze was fixed on the plush creature, which now sat on a plinth beside her, propped up with almost ceremonial care. Ryan wasn't sure if she was admiring it or scanning it for weapons. "What is it made of?" she asked. Polyester stuffing and bad decisions?" She frowned slightly. "And what function does it serve?" "It's a gift," he said, shrugging. "Something you give someone without expecting anything back. For comfort, or weird affection, or because you're crash landing into their secret lair and want to make a good first impression." She tilted her head. "Zeller do not give. We trade, threaten, or steal. Sometimes we offer symbolic bloodstones. But never this." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You've seriously never gotten a gift before?" "No." There was a pause, the kind that stretched and hummed like it wanted to see how long your lungs could hold out. "Well," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "I guess that makes me—" "What?" "A historical event?" She didn't blink. "You are either brave or profoundly uneducated." "Option 3, he said, grinning. "Underpaid." Behind them, one of the dormant consoles flickered, just briefly. Sarava's eyes darted toward it. Rian pretended not to notice, but he filed it away. Something in this room wasn't as asleep as it looked. "So what now?" he asked, sitting cross-legged on the floor like a man with absolutely no sense of danger or posture. "Do I get a guided tour? Or is this the part where you dissect my memories and feed them to your pet starfish?" "I do not have a starfish," she said. "Anymore." "That's comforting." Sarava leaned forward slightly. The lighting shifted, revealing faint circuitry tracing the inner line of her neck, like vines made of light. Her voice, though calm, carried the weight of someone who hadn't used it often and was still trying to remember the shape of conversation. "You fell from orbit in a Federation cargo freighter named after a cutlery item. You had no clearance, no diplomatic tags, and yet you were not vaporized. Yeah, your security drone liked my cereal bars." She blinked slowly. "It is against protocol to enter Velastor without sanctioned escort, yet you were allowed to walk unimpeded to my chamber." He hesitated. "So, you're saying either your security sucks or I'm supernaturally charming." "I'm saying this should not have been possible." "Well," Rian said, stretching his arms behind his head, "that makes two of us, because from what I'm seeing, you don't seem like someone who invites company." Her gaze turned sharp but not unkind. "Do not mistake tolerance for affection." "Wouldn't dream of it," he said. "But if I start decorating this room with glow-in-the-dark stickers, just know it comes from a place of deep professional disrespect." A sound cracked through the silence. A mechanical click, subtle but distinct. One of the ancient consoles behind Ryan had come to life. Barely. A single glyph pulsed on its surface. Sarava stood instantly. "Do not move," she said. "Okay," he replied, raising both hands. "Just to clarify, am I about to be devoured by a haunted computer or—" She walked past him and pressed her hand against the console's edge. The machine hissed. Not in hostility. It sounded more like excitement. "Someone is watching," she said. Like, now? Yes. Should I wave? Or is this more of a, they're preparing to erase us kind of thing? Unknown. Comforting. She turned to face him, the faintest glint of curiosity in her amber eyes. There are systems here older than your species. These are not local, she said. Then what are they? Encoded memories. Possibly pre-collapse. He leaned over to peek at the display. Collapse of what? A civilization? Or a particularly important snack company? Both, she said grimly. The console chimed again. Then, with digital chirpiness wholly unsuited to the mood, it announced, Initiating exhibition protocol. Please do not panic. Ryan turned to Sarava. Should I panic? Number, but stand behind me, in case the floor decides to open. He did, just in time for the far wall to slide open with an unnecessary flourish and reveal a hallway. But not just any hallway. It shimmered, its architecture glitching between styles. Zellier, Terran, Quarian, even something that looked suspiciously IKEA. The lights buzzed, then changed to a soft lavender hue. Welcome, honored participants, said the disembodied voice. You have been selected for the Great Tour of Memory Zone Delta 7. Kindly refrain from licking the walls. I wasn't planning on it, Ryan said quickly. Good, Sarava said. Because they bite. They stepped into the hallway. As they passed the threshold, the air shimmered and a holographic projection ignited around them. A living city flickered into view. Hovercrafts, plasma rails, skyscrapers folded like origami in midair. Above them, 3 moons orbited lazily, one of them visibly cracked open like an egg. This was Zellier Prime, Sarava said, before the fracture. It's beautiful, Ryan murmured. It was orderly until the drift wars, then the laughing AI, then the romantic meteor storm incident. Romantic meteor storm? 2 moons collided. The resulting debris spelled a love poem. It's considered historically embarrassing. The projection shifted again. Now they stood in a marketplace, stalls selling crystalline fruit, weapons shaped like poetry, and something that looked suspiciously like an espresso machine with legs. People bustled around. Not holograms, memories. Sarava watched them, unmoving. Is that you? Ryan asked, pointing to a younger version of her. Taller than most, already formidable, but lacking the hardened calm she now wore. She didn't answer. The projection blinked. That version of her turned, received a ceremonial staff from an elder, and was instantly bowed to by the crowd. They called me Keeper of the Blood Gate, she said softly. Catchy title. I was 17. That's less catchy. The projection faded, leaving them once again in the corridor. Sarava turned to him, something unreadable flickering behind her eyes. These systems should not be active. You are triggering them. Me? Why? Because I gave you a penguin? No, she said, because the fortress seems to think you're a story. He frowned. That a good thing or a bad thing? I do not know, she said, but stories tend to end. Then from somewhere behind them, a voice echoed, mechanical, familiar, and deeply smug. Correction, some stories begin with plush toys and end with catastrophic love. They turned. The wall was now displaying a single line of text, blinking in lavender. Installing, Chapter 2. Please stay still and emotionally available. Ryan sighed. So we're inside a romantic AI fortress that's trying to matchmake us using memory holograms and psychotic architecture? Yes, Sarava said, and now it's self-aware again. Great, he muttered. You'd think if I wanted to be trapped in an old romantic comedy, I'd at least get popcorn. The corridor didn't end. It elongated. Not physically, though Ryan wouldn't put it past this place, but perceptually, like walking inside the punchline of a joke the universe hadn't told yet. Each step produced a soft musical chime, as though the floor had opinions on tempo. Sarava walked ahead, silent as ever, her armor humming faintly in rhythm with the glowing walls. Ryan trailed behind, arms folded, watching his footsteps like they might suddenly turn into frogs. I'm not saying your fortress is alive, he muttered, but I'm also not saying it's trying to marry us. Its matchmaking attempts are highly inefficient, Sarava replied without turning. In Zeller courtship, we usually begin with a duel. That sounds romantic. Only if you survive. They reached a door. This one didn't slide open, swing, or vanish dramatically. It sneezed, loudly. A spray of holographic confetti burst into the air, followed by a victorious trumpet fanfare, and a blinking sign overhead that read, Chamber of Hearts and Curiosities. Is this a trap? Ryan asked. No, said the voice of the AI from above. It's a boutique emotional chamber with complimentary trauma-flavored ambiance. Sarava sighed the way someone might when stepping into mild acid. Then the door inhaled again and opened. Inside was a chamber lined with mirrors, but not of glass. These mirrors reflected memory, not appearance. The walls shimmered with scenes from different points in time. Some familiar, some alien. On one panel, Ryan saw a small version of himself trying to build a rocket from old soda cans. It exploded. 12-year-old him looked delighted. Next to it, a Zellier child sparred with a training drone twice her size. It burst into flames. The girl looked bored. He pointed. Is that you? Yes, Sarava said. On my 6th birthday. The drone was a gift. It was supposed to last 3 years. Charming. She stepped forward. The room responded. A sphere of light descended from the ceiling, opening like a blooming flower. Inside floated what looked like a tangle of wires, old stars, and compressed thoughts. The AI's voice took on a reverent tone. You have reached the emotional core node. Proceed only if your heart contains more than sarcasm. That's going to be a problem, Rian whispered. Sarava ignored the warning. She placed her hand on the sphere. The room darkened. The mirrors shifted. A memory, hers, took the entire wall. A battlefield. Cold, lunar. Soldiers knelt before her, all wounded. She stood alone at the top of a black ridge, bloodless and still, her face unreadable. One soldier tried to speak. She turned away. I was not always alone, she said, but power isolates. Reverence became distance. Distance became fear. Could have used some plush therapy back then, Rian said gently. She gave a half smile, or something like it. Barely there, but enough to stir something in the AI. The flower sphere beeped enthusiastically and spat out an object with a loud thwump. It hit the floor with a soft squeak. It was a second plush. This one resembled a lopsided intergalactic starfish with googly eyes and tiny boots. What the hell, Ryan said. Did your haunted fortress just respond to emotional vulnerability with merchandise? Yes, Sarava said flatly. Do you want it? She picked up the plush and held it aloft like a sacred relic. Its face is asymmetrical, she noted. Adds character. The walls rippled. The star maps returned, overlaid with new data, paths that hadn't been shown before. Coordinates stretched from Velas Tor to somewhere labeled only as YRR Null. Rian tilted his head. That sound ominous, or is it just me? Null zones are regions where AI presence is forcibly erased, she said. They are memory graves. Forbidden. So, obviously we're going there, Sarava considered. The fortress has chosen to show this path. It must believe it matters. The AI cleared its throat audibly. I do believe it matters. Also, I have prepared a playlist for the journey. Would you like atmospheric tension or hopeful dread? No, Sarava said. Yes, Ryan countered. The chamber trembled slightly, and a slow orchestral buildup began to play. It sounded like someone tuning a violin while being chased by emotional consequences. The door reopened, this time without sneezing. Outside, the hallway had changed. It sloped downward now, illuminated by bioluminescent lines pulsing toward a hangar. A ship awaited them there. Not one Ryan had seen before. It was part organic, part mechanical, its hull breathing faintly like a sleeping beast. Sarava paused. This is not mine, she said. The AI chimed again. It is a relic, designed for two, sentient pairing protocol included. May I suggest you name it something emotionally resonant? Rion said. How about the absolutely not a date cruiser? No, Sarava said. Plushy Avenger? No. Fine. Captain Blorp's revenge? Sarava didn't speak for a moment. Then solemnly, that will do. They entered the ship. It accepted them without hesitation. Panels lit beneath their feet, and soft music echoed from the walls. The cockpit pulsed. The AI whispered something across the intercom. Course set for YRR null. Warning, destination includes possible existential hazards, unresolved emotions, and excessive metaphors. Ryan settled into the co-pilot seat. Well, that's basically my dating history. Sarava took the helm. Then you are well prepared. The ship lifted slowly at first, then with a sudden lurch into silence. Beyond the hangar, the stars stretched. The planet fell behind. The coordinates burned on the screen like a secret dared into existence. Ryan glanced sideways. Just out of curiosity, if we don't make it, does the AI at least promise to return our plushies to someone who'll appreciate them? No, Sarava said, but I will. He blinked. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me in deep space. Then you've met very few people, she said. He smiled. She didn't, but her hand rested lightly on the starfish plush beside her, as if anchoring herself with something absurd and gentle. The ship hurtled toward the void. The AI queued up another song, something halfway between an opera and a glitch. And somewhere in the heart of the galaxy, a null zone waited to be remembered. The ship dropped out of light skip with a stomach-turning jolt and a noise that sounded suspiciously like a rubber duck being stepped on by a god. Ryan gripped the armrests with the dignity of a man who had not entirely accepted his own survival. Outside, the stars blinked dimly, as though embarrassed to be caught watching. War Null did not so much appear as fail to not appear, a yawning absence, a fracture in the idea of presence itself. It floated before them like a wound in the cosmos, surrounded by a lattice of broken satellites, ancient hulls, and things too large to name politely. Do we knock? Ryan asked. No, Sarova replied. We slipped through, quietly. Great, subtle intrusion into the haunted data tomb of cosmic regrets. I've done worse on a first date. The AI flickered its display. Just for the record, this still isn't a date, unless you want it to be. No, Sarava said. Yes, Ryan added quickly, just to maintain equilibrium. The ship glided toward the anomaly, its hull adjusted temperature, density, and sarcasm output. Within seconds, the coordinates resolved into a structure, an inverted obelisk rotating slowly inside the void. Ryan squinted at the blinking text scrolling across its surface. Why does it say insert feeling here in every language? It's a reflection engine, Sarava said, built to house echo fragments of civilizations long past. This is where they came to forget and be forgotten. Why do I get the feeling we're about to be emotionally mugged? Because you're correct. The docking protocol engaged with a polite shudder. The ship locked into a platform made of dark light and regret. The ramp extended. Inside, the obelisk was not empty. It watched. The walls shimmered with faceless figures, replaying moments stripped of identity. 1,000 near kisses, 1,000,000 betrayals, a few failed dance competitions. In the center floated a crystalline entity, a logic core the size of a truck and just as tactful. Sarava approached it. Ryan followed, his new starfish plush tucked protectively under one arm. This place, she said quietly, was the last project of the Zellir mines before the Drift Wars. They believed if they could store all their pain here, they could live freely. Did it work? The core began to feel everything. It wept into the data streams and collapsed under its own sorrow. It has slept since then. And now oh great, it's waking up, isn't it? The core pulsed. Emotional reboot detected, it boomed. Who dares trigger the Heartback protocol? Ryan stepped forward. Hi, I'm Ryan. This is Sarava. We brought plushies. Plushies detected. Sentimental disturbance confirmed. Sarava's fingers twitched near her blade, but Ryan held up a hand. Let me try. He cleared his throat. Listen, you're not broken. You're oversensitive. And that's not a flaw. That's a feature. Trust me, I cried during a commercial once because a toaster looked lonely. The core flickered. Clarify. Toaster? It had dreams of warm bread. Anyway, I think you're not meant to forget emotions. You're meant to process them, absorb them, use them. The light changed. The mirrored walls began replaying not just pain, but healing. Hugs, laughter, a Zellier child being lifted on someone's shoulders. A moment where a human gave an alien vampire woman a ridiculous penguin toy and didn't expect anything back. Sarava stepped beside him. "We can offer you a choice," she said. "You don't have to store pain anymore. You can store stories." The core hummed. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, with a soft sigh that seemed to come from the architecture itself, accepted. The structure began to transform. Memory shifted into narrative. Lights reconfigured into storylines, arcs, endings. The obelisk became a library, not of loss, but of meaning. Outside, the stars grew brighter. The void around YRR null shimmered and slowly mended. Back on the ship, the AI cheered. "Congratulations! You have successfully recontextualized a galactic trauma core through emotional honesty and collectible plushies." Ryan grinned. "Do we get a badge for that?" "No," Sarava said. "Yes," the AI confirmed. "A digital badge and a coupon for 10% off existential crises." As the ship turned away, leaving the restored archive behind, Sarava placed the starfish plush gently on the control panel. Ryan watched her. "You've changed," he said. She looked at him, long ears twitching. "So have you." He smiled. "Yeah, I think I might actually be happy. That will pass." "Wow, thanks for the reassurance." "But not immediately," she added, and the look in her eyes softened. Just barely. They traveled in companionable silence for a while, stars streaking past. "Where to now?" he asked. "There are other places where memory has been turned against itself," she said. "We could fix them, as long as we don't have to fight any more vending machines." "No promises." As the ship continued through the stars, the AI queued up a new song. This one was hopeful, a little cheesy, but genuine. Ryan leaned back, hands behind his head, staring up at the ceiling. "You know," he said, "this whole thing started because I gave you a gift." "Yes," Sarava replied. "You ever going to give me one?" "I already have." He turned to look at her. "I gave you a witness," she said, and in the silence that followed, something shifted, gently, permanently. They didn't need to say anything more. The stars understood. The air was wrong, too dry, too sharp, as if someone had taken oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen and shaken them in the wrong ratios like a badly mixed cocktail. She coughed, then immediately winced. Bad idea. Her ribs protested, her side ached, and something sticky was matting the fine hairs along her left shoulder. Blood? Lubricant? It smelled faintly of mint and reactor coolant. She opened her eyes and saw sky. But not her sky. It was peach-tinted and crisscrossed with thin, jagged clouds, like someone had slashed open the atmosphere and forgotten to stitch it back up. A double moon hovered low, one large and bruised like a cosmic fruit, the other flickering like a malfunctioning bulb. Her throat tightened. This was Terra. She pushed herself up with a groan and immediately regretted it. A shard of metal jutted from the sand next to her, part of the escape pod's hull still smoking. Her left leg was scraped raw. Her suit, custom fitted in line with pale green synth weave, was scorched at the knee and hip. Her long ears drooped. Her ancestors were going to eat her. Well, assuming the humans didn't get to her first, she staggered to her feet and turned slowly, scanning the desert. Sand, rocks, more sand. A dead bush that looked like it might file a complaint if it had sentience. Nothing moved. And then something did. A low, thrumming hum, mechanical and confident, like a machine that knew exactly how expensive it was. She whipped around and crouched behind the escape pod remains, trying to make herself smaller, a fairly difficult task considering she was already under a meter tall. Her ears flattened against her head. The sound grew louder, closer. A hover transport slid into view from behind a sandstone ridge, its undercarriage kicking up fine trails of pink dust. It wasn't military, too rusty, too patched together. This one had been loved, or hated, or both. It coughed as it landed, shuddered, and finally gave a pitiful electronic wheeze before settling down on uneven legs. The door hissed. A tall figure stepped out, silhouetted by the bright daylight. It was humanoid, definitely human. Bipedal, sturdy, broad-shouldered, a tangle of dark hair topped his head like an unpruned shrub, and he wore a vest covered in pockets, wires, and something that looked suspiciously like a half-eaten protein bar. She froze. Her heart beat a staccato rhythm against her ribs. He took one step forward. She squeaked. He turned his head. "Hello?" "Nope." "Number bad. Abort mission." She stood up, hands trembling, voice cracking. "Please don't eat me." The man stopped, his head tilted like a curious dog's. "What?" "Don't eat me," she repeated, now waving her hands wildly for emphasis. I'm full of bones. I'm not even seasoned. I taste like old algae and disappointment." There was a long silence. Then the man snorted. "You taste like what?" "I said I taste bad. Like spoiled rations. Like expired rootworms." The man put both hands on his hips, then scratched his beard. "Kid, I just had a breakfast burrito the size of my head. I'm not about to chase down a tiny alien for dessert." She blinked. He took another step forward and crouched a few meters away from her, slowly, like someone trying not to startle a wild animal. "You hurt?" She didn't answer. "I've got a med kit in the hover," he added, "and a blanket, maybe some weird earth snacks that'll terrify your digestive system." She narrowed her eyes. "Is that a trick?" "Yes," he said solemnly. "I lure in small alien girls with peanut butter crackers and then challenge them to interpret Earth pop culture. It's a brutal test. Many have failed." Her eyes stayed narrow, but she didn't move. He sighed and stood. "All right, listen. You can come with me and patch up whatever's leaking, or you can stay here and wait for the buzzards. I should warn you, Terra buzzards are about the size of a sedan and incredibly judgmental." She chewed on her lower lip. Then cautiously she took a step forward, and another. She was close enough now to see the name patch on his vest, DEV. "Dev," she repeated, testing the word. "Yep, developer short for Devlin, which is short for I made some poor choices and now I live in the desert. What do I call you?" She hesitated. Her real name was 11 syllables long and required vocal cords shaped like a spiral, plus an ultrasonic click at the end. She simplified. Z. Z, he said with a nod. "Nice, compact, easy to yell when you inevitably break something valuable." Her ears twitched upward, just a little. He motioned to the transport. "Come on, let's get those injuries looked at, and I'll introduce you to the wonders of air conditioning." She climbed into the transport carefully, eyeing every panel like it might sprout teeth. The interior was a mix of tech, trash, and chaos. Wires bundled like mutant noodles, a half-dismantled plasma rifle shoved under a seat, and an overhead speaker that played jazz versions of old Earth commercials at random intervals. The co-pilot seat had a throw pillow that said, "Welcome to Chaos," in sparkly thread. She sat and watched Dev toggle the startup sequence with casual ease. The hover lurched into motion. "So," he said, glancing sideways at her, "which one of your people told you we eat aliens?" She crossed her arms. "Everyone." He blinked. "Everyone?" "Our elders," she said, "and the orientation videos, and the cartoon we watched at the nursery colony. Don't talk to humans, the crunching years." Dev groaned. "We really need better PR." She pointed to the overhead display. "That's not a weapon, is it?" "No, that's a fan." "And that?" "That's a cup holder." "And that?" He looked. "Okay, that's a weapon, but it only works if you sneeze on it." She gave him a long look. The transport crested a ridge, and his dome came into view. A squat structure made of salvage parts, glowing slightly at the seams, with a solar array shaped like a spider sprawled across one side. A chicken-like robot patrolled the perimeter, clucking ominously. She leaned forward. "Your house looks like it's about to explode." "It always looks like that," he said proudly. "I call it the not a death trap." "It's a work in progress." As they descended toward the dome, she felt her shoulders relax. Just a little. The dome hissed open with a mechanical sigh, like a robot trying to hold in a complaint. Z stepped inside cautiously, arms folded tight around her chest. The air smelled of metal, ozone, and something burnt, but not in a dangerous way. More like someone had recently tried to make toast with a plasma torch. The interior was cluttered, chaotic, and humming with low-grade energy. Panels blinked on every wall. A small gravity stabilizer in the corner emitted a friendly blue light, though it was slightly crooked, which made the floor tilt just enough to feel like walking on a polite seesaw. A frame poster that read, "Keep your circuits cool," had fallen sideways and was now wedged behind a coil of cables that resembled synthetic spaghetti. Z took one step and promptly slipped on a loose battery pack, letting out a high-pitched noise of distress that ended in a squeaky, "Oop!" Dev turned around just in time to see her flail and land directly into an open crate of mismatched socks. "Careful," he said, grinning. "Those socks are known to attack when threatened, especially the striped ones." She scrambled upright, ears twitching furiously. "You live like this on purpose?" "Absolutely. This is the dream," he said, pulling off his vest and tossing it onto a chair that was mostly duct tape. "I've got hot water, artificial gravity, and enough snacks to survive at least 2 minor apocalypses. Maybe 3, if we ration the cheese." She eyed the kettle in the corner, which was humming ominously. "Your appliances sound like they're plotting something." "They are," he said. "The blender wants to overthrow the microwave. It's very tense in the kitchen sector." Z didn't smile, but her ears twitched again. A good sign. Dev opened a storage unit and pulled out a medical scanner, the type used in old field hospitals. It whirred to life with a ping, did a dramatic boot up, and then immediately requested a firmware update from 16 years ago. He hit "Remind me later" and knelt in front of her. "Okay, let's take a look at that leg." Z stiffened. "What if this is the part where you inject me with seasoning?" He blinked. "What?" "Humans inject things before eating them. I saw it in a documentary. They call it marinating." "That was a cooking show, wasn't it?" "It was narrated by a guy with a very dramatic voice. Yeah, that's Gordon Ramsay. He yells at salads. Doesn't mean we all do." Still wary, Z sat down on a crate while Dev gently scanned her injuries. The scanner beeped approvingly, then displayed a green hologram of her leg bones with a cheerful cartoon thumbs up in the corner. Dev pressed a small patch of biofoam to her scraped skin. It hissed, then hardened into a soft seal. "No major damage. You'll live," he said, "until you roast me like a festival beetle." "Kid, if I were going to roast you, I wouldn't be using advanced medical tech and a heating bill." Z glanced at the wall where a small screen displayed the current outside temperature. "Why does it say hell adjacent?" "That's the weather report. It's sarcastic." She let out a cautious breath and looked around the dome again. Less panic this time. A small bot with a mop skittered by, paused to chirp at her, then resumed cleaning, dragging a piece of toast behind it like a prize. "What is that?" "Trash bot. He's adopted the toast. It's his son now." The edges of her mouth twitched. "That's not biologically possible." "Tell him that." Dev stood up, stretched, then tossed her a blanket made from repurposed thermal netting. She caught it and blinked at the softness. "Why are you being nice to me?" He paused mid-reach for the coffee machine. "Because you crash-landed in the middle of nowhere and screamed, 'Please don't eat me,' like it was your name." "That's not a reason." "I guess not, but maybe it's enough." He hesitated. "Also, I may be banned from 3 local trade outposts for unauthorized minor alien endangerment. So if anyone asks, I rescued you while fending off a sandworm." She narrowed her eyes. "There was no sandworm." "There was in the report I haven't filed yet." Z wrapped the blanket tighter. "You're very weird." "I take that as a compliment." Later, after a bowl of suspiciously orange food that Dev insisted was safe and at least 20% real, Z perched on a stool and studied a holographic globe he projected from a cracked console. The map showed a wide stretch of the desert, marked with scattered stations and a blinking red dot labeled, "You are probably here." "This planet is very ugly," she said. "I prefer the term aesthetic challenged." She pointed to a cluster of towers on the map's edge. "What's that?" "Old mining outposts, mostly abandoned. Some scavengers. Don't go there unless you want to get lectured by a paranoid android with trust issues." Her finger moved. And this? That's a noodle bar. Best synth ramen on this side of the asteroid belt. Humans are strange, Dev shrugged. We make do. She watched him for a moment, frowning slightly. You really don't want to eat me? Z, he said, slumping onto the couch and flipping open a datapad. If I ate every weird, sarcastic, crash-landed alien that crossed my path, I'd have a cookbook instead of a conscience. Is that a human proverb? It is now. She didn't reply. She just curled her knees up beneath the blanket, letting the ambient heat soak into her bones. For the first time since waking up in a cracked escape pod on a terrifying planet, she felt a little less like prey and a little more like something else. Not safe, not yet, but not alone. The next morning began with an explosion. Not the dangerous kind, more like the, oops, I mixed coffee with industrial degreaser again kind. The kitchen glowed faintly blue as a puff of smoke curled out of the beverage synthesizer. Dev stood nearby, waving at the haze with a spatula, and wearing a pair of boxers that had a printed diagram of a warp engine labeled, "Definitely not to scale." Z, he called toward the sleeping nook. Note to self, if it smells like victory and radiator fluid, do not drink it. She peeked out from behind a stack of heat-insulated crates, blinking groggily. Was that a breakfast attempt? More like a breakfast experiment. The results are inconclusive, but the fire suppression system has opinions. A sealing nozzle dribbled foam onto the counter with a defeated hiss. Dev turned and flopped into a chair that had 3 legs and an attitude. So, what's the plan today? Besides not exploding the kitchen, obviously. Z dragged her blanket with her as she stepped out, watching the smoldering appliance with wary suspicion. You're asking me? Sure, you're the tiny alien guest of honor. First rule of hospitality, don't kidnap a space traveler and then make all the decisions. That's how you get bad reviews. She raised an eyebrow. Is that a thing? Dev tapped a dusty screen. A review popped up. 1 star, saved my life, but served me soup made from something that might have screamed. Roxel from Sector 3. Z sat across from him. I should contact my people. Already tried pinging your comms network. Got a bunch of static and a very angry AI yelling about unpaid data tariffs. Her ears drooped. They probably think I'm dead. Give it time. Galactic bureaucracy is slower than my toaster AI, and he's been buffering since Tuesday. She stayed quiet for a long moment, tracing circles on the table with one finger. I was supposed to be delivering artifacts to the exchange base near the Selvin Trench, a diplomatic courier mission. First one I've ever been trusted with. Dev blinked. They let you fly a diplomatic mission solo? Technically, there was a supervisor, but he sneezed into the warp calibrator. Oh, and then panicked and hit the randomizer button. Ooh! And then he ejected himself into the supply bay and got trapped in a crate labeled emergency beans. Dev clapped slowly. Okay, that's honestly impressive. Z sighed. We were supposed to meet with a Terran envoy, trade cultural relics, discuss future cooperation, and instead you crash-landed into a desert and accused a stranger of trying to eat you. Her cheeks flushed a pale lavender. Yes, Dev scratched his head. Sounds like first contact, classic edition. They spent the morning calibrating the comm tower outside the dome. Well, Dev calibrated, while Z mostly shouted helpful suggestions like, that wire looks dangerous, and are you supposed to be glowing? And your boot is smoking. The transmitter sputtered, buzzed, and finally emitted a loud honk. Dev stared at it. Why does it sound like a depressed goose? I think it's trying to say hello. Sounds more like it wants to unionize. By midday, Z had poked through most of Dev's living quarters. She found a drawer filled with oddly shaped coins from 12 different systems, a plush toy shaped like a malfunctioning satellite, and a collection of hollowed-out circuit boards that had been turned into coasters. What do you do out here? She asked finally. Dev looked up from a tangled cable mess he called a portable inverter. Mostly scavenging, light repairs, and avoiding people who owe me money or want to shoot me. Sometimes both. Why live alone? Easier, quieter. No one eats the last packet of cheddar puffs without asking. Z picked up a faded photo from the corner of a shelf. It showed a younger Dev, smiling, standing next to an old boxy spacecraft with the words Junk Whisperer spray painted on the side in neon. This yours? Was, before it decided to disassemble itself mid-atmospheric re-entry. Took my favorite mug with it. Rude. She set the photo down. You miss being out there? He shrugged. Sometimes, but then I remember that space is cold, full of weird laws, and smells like burned belt rubber. A loud beep interrupted them. The transmitter had locked onto something. Dev darted over and tapped the console. Incoming signal, not local. Z's ears perked up. My people? Could also be a space pirate newsletter. Let's find out. The screen lit up with static, then slowly resolved into an image. A familiar face, oval-eyed, sharp-jawed, and pale blue-skinned with ceremonial forehead gems, appeared. Envoy Commander Veltrix of the Ceroli Dispatch. Identity confirmation required. Z leapt forward. Zelzanari Fea Teshmi reporting. I'm alive. The commander's eyes widened. You survived the anomaly? Your signal vanished? Crash-landed, rescued. Currently living with a possibly unhinged Terran who eats cheese-based meals and talks to robots. Dev waved. Hi. Veltrix blinked. Understood. Coordinates received. Extraction vessel en route. Z stepped back, heart pounding. They're coming. Dev leaned back in his chair. Guess that means you'll be heading out soon. She didn't respond right away. The idea sat in her chest like a weighted blanket. Familiar, comforting, but heavier than expected. I guess so. He stood, stretching. Well, that gives us a few hours to prep. Maybe clean the place, say a dramatic goodbye, and avoid the usual interspecies awkwardness. Z looked up at him. You mean like me giving you a gift and you pretending not to cry? Exactly, except I definitely won't cry. You're already misty-eyed. I'm allergic to sentiment. They shared a small laugh. For the first time, it felt less like an ending and more like something pausing, a bookmark between stars. The extraction ship wasn't exactly discreet. It screamed into the atmosphere like a drunken comet with attitude, scattering desert sand in a 10-kilometer radius and setting off half the proximity alarms Dev had jury-rigged to warn him of nosy neighbors or overly curious tumbleweeds. The sky turned purple, then green, then briefly displayed a glitching holographic advertisement for Graxian Foot Balm, tingle guaranteed, before the ship finally thudded down on a nearby ridge. Z stared out the dome window, face unreadable. Dev slurped his nutrient slush through a cracked straw. Well, they sure know how to make an entrance. You sure this isn't your planet's version of a prank? No, she said, brushing non-existent dust off her tunic. Ceruli extractions are ceremonious, grand. There is a long-standing belief that subtlety is the enemy of diplomacy. Right. Nothing says tact like a sonic boom and free skincare ads. Z didn't smile. She just adjusted the folds of her robe and stared a little harder. Dev stood, stuffing his slush into a cup holder that had once been part of a laser rifle. So, you ready? I don't know. That makes two of us. He offered her a small, round object. She took it, turning it over. A palm-sized copper disc, etched with spirals and symbols. A homing token, he said. You activate it, it pings me with your location. Limited range, but it'll work anywhere in system. Her ears flicked. Is this a human custom? Number I made it up 10 minutes ago with a soldering iron and blind optimism. She slipped it into a fold of her sleeve. Thank you. A low musical chime echoed outside. A soft blue beam extended from the ship to the dome's entryway, humming with gravitational harmonics. Z turned. I suppose this is goodbye. Unless you decide to stick around for tonight's dinner, I was going to attempt eggs. She shuddered. Your previous food attempt nearly liquefied the stove. Yeah, but the flavor was intergalactic. A pause, then a faint smile. Farewell, Dev. Don't be a stranger, Z. She stepped into the light and vanished upward, in a swirl of harmless particles and one confused moth. Dev stared at the spot she'd been standing, then looked around the dome, then muttered, well, guess it's just me, the talking coffee maker, and trash bot again. Trashbot beeped indignantly and shoved a sock under the couch. Time passed weirdly when you were alone. The days blurred. Dev tinkered, adjusted, tried and failed to grow a plant in recycled coolant, and even attempted to teach Trashbot to play cards. Trashbot cheated. The silence wasn't oppressive, just wider. Every now and then, Dev would glance at the token he kept on the workbench. No signals. Just quiet. Until one evening, 3 weeks later, the token chirped. Just once. A soft, gentle tone. He stared at it like it had grown fangs and demanded a tip. "Z?" he muttered. The token glowed, and a projection flickered above it. A message file. Z appeared, hair longer, ears slightly more tilted in what he recognized as mild exasperation. "I borrowed a diplomatic relay satellite. If anyone asks, it was for treaty purposes." She rolled her eyes at herself. "I thought I'd be relieved to be back, safe, surrounded by familiarity and reason. But all I can think about is the smell of burnt cheese and a toaster that wanted rights." Dev grinned. "I gave my report, told them everything. Left out the part where I believed you were going to eat me, mostly because the Admiral laughed too hard the last time I told him about a sentient lasagna." She hesitated. "I don't know if I'm allowed to return yet. Protocol, reviews, debriefing, and someone put my name on a recruitment poster without telling me." She held up a print, her face under the caption, "Meet Peace? Her name is Tesh Me." "I'm not Peace. I'm not sure what I am right now. But I do know I'd like to see the stars again. Maybe from a slightly smoky dome with a view of the least interesting mountain range in the quadrant." She smiled, softer this time. "I'll call again." The projection flickered off. Dev sat for a long time, arms crossed, smile ghosting around the edges of his mouth. Then he turned to Trashbot. "Well, buddy, time to clean up. We've got diplomatic company on the horizon." Trashbot, ever loyal, began vacuuming with furious, misguided purpose, sucking up 2 wires, a spoon, and half a snack bar. Dev let it happen. He had work to do. The dome needed upgrades. The food needed to be less weaponized. And maybe, just maybe, he'd put together another homing token, this time with better range. Just in case. It started with a knock, which was strange considering the dome didn't have a door. Dev looked up from a pile of partially disassembled fusion batteries, blinking behind goggles that had been cracked since Tuesday. The knock came again. 3 gentle taps and an impatient buzz. Trashbot immediately whirred toward the sound, stopped, reversed, got tangled in a cable, and fell over with a mournful beep. "Good effort," Dev said, standing and brushing soot off his jumpsuit. "Maybe next time try knocking back." The airlock shimmered as the exterior field disengaged. Then the entry pad blinked blue, and the figure stepped inside, small, robed, ears long, and twitching slightly from static charge. Z. She looked around like someone seeing an old friend wearing a new hat. "Did you replace the ceiling panels with reflective foil?" Dev crossed his arms. "I call it industrial chic meets abandoned satellite." She took a step closer. "And is that an indoor hydroponic cactus?" "It's a work in progress. He's called Kevin. He bites." Z smiled, then laughed outright when Kevin let out a wet squelch and inflated slightly in greeting. "You made friends." "I had to. You ghosted me for 6 weeks and left me with only Trashbot and a calendar that insists today is always Wednesday." Z reached into her satchel and pulled out a familiar copper disc, the homing token. "I modified it," she said. "Now it works across systems. Also, it plays music if you twist it the right way. Although it defaults to cerulean opera." Dev winced. Painful but efficient. They stood there in silence for a breath, then another. Z fidgeted with her sleeves. "They offered me a permanent position, diplomatic envoy, full-time, travel between systems, protocol, dignitaries, lunches that last 4 hours and involve 12 forks." Dev raised an eyebrow. "You say that like it's a death sentence." "It's fine. It's what I trained for, what I wanted." A pause. "But I realized I only want it if I get to complain to someone afterward who hands me questionable tea and tells me jokes about radioactive socks." Dev leaned against the workbench. "So you came back." "I came to ask if you'd be willing to leave." He blinked. Leave, he echoed. Like, travel? Z nodded. The diplomatic fleet needs a systems engineer, someone who knows how to fix things with duct tape and sarcasm, and someone who can keep me from accidentally starting wars with aggressive salad tongs. Dev scratched his chin. I mean, I am uniquely qualified to offend interstellar cuisine, and I figure we can rig up the Junk Whisperer's nav core into something marginally legal. I already stole the AI from a retired luxury yacht. Her name's Madeline. She thinks we're all beneath her, but she navigates like a dream. Dev's grin widened. You stole a yacht AI? I told them it was for interspecies harmony. You are so corruptible. I'm proud. They sat together for hours, mapping out a ship they hadn't built yet, eating fried nutrient squares shaped like extinct reptiles, and arguing over whose turn it was to clean Kevin. Kevin hissed and inflated again. Later, under the stars outside the dome, Z stood beside Dev, hands folded behind her back. I was terrified of you, she said quietly. I remember. You were shaking and holding a spoon like it was a weapon. I thought you were going to eat me. Still not off the table, Dev teased. She elbowed him, but her smile lingered. But you fed me, covered me in a blanket, and let me stay without asking anything. I figured you'd do the same if our roles were reversed. She looked at him. Not everyone would. They watched the sky shimmer with distant ships, blue dots, orange tails, little flashes of possibility. You sure you're ready to go back out there? She asked. I've got nothing here but a sarcastic cleaning bot and an emotionally manipulative cactus. Trashbot beeped indignantly from inside. Kevin puffed up and flopped over. Besides, Dev added, you're the first person who didn't call my repairs chaotic improvisation. That kind of loyalty deserves a co-pilot. Z extended a hand. Partners, she said. Only if I get to name the ship. No meat jokes. Too late. I already submitted the paperwork for the grilled cheese nebula. Dev? Fine. The diplomatically compliant grilled cheese nebula. She groaned. But not immediately, she added, and the look in her eyes softened. Just barely. They traveled in companionable silence for a while, stars streaking past. Where to now, he asked. There are other places where memory has been turned against itself, she said. We could fix them, as long as we don't have to fight any more vending machines. No promises. As the ship continued through the stars, the AI queued up a new song. This one was hopeful, a little cheesy, but genuine. Ryan leaned back, hands behind his head, staring up at the ceiling. You know, he said, this whole thing started because I gave you a gift. Yes, Sarava replied. You ever going to give me one? I already have. He turned to look at her. I gave you a witness, she said, and in the silence that followed, something shifted, gently, permanently. They didn't need to say anything more. The stars understood.